Hello. Today General Hospital will reveal Maxie never imagined that her work trip to the Five Poppies resort, assigned to assess Deception's new product line and explore expansion opportunities, would turn into a life-or-death investigation. At first, everything appeared to be just another work-related getaway. Maxie was supposed to relax and focus on reviewing the brand's potential market, something she had done countless times before. Yet, the moment she arrived at the secluded, luxurious resort, an unsettling atmosphere took hold. It began with a strange silence that clung to the air, a quiet that felt off, almost suffocating. The staff, while polite and courteous, exchanged nervous glances and whispers that were difficult to ignore. Maxie, ever the perceptive one, sensed something wasn't right, but she brushed it off, convincing herself it was just a case of paranoia. But as the day wore on, it became harder to ignore the growing sense of unease. The environment, while beautiful and serene, felt like it was hiding something dark beneath its pristine surface. The true turn of events came when Maxie inadvertently overheard a conversation that chilled her to the bone. She had been walking down one of the resort's scenic corridors when she paused to take in the view of the ocean. It was then that she overheard a group of influential people, one of whom she recognized from the world of high-end business dealings, discussing something that didn't add up. Her ears picked up the words, money laundering, sunny Corinthos, and deception. The unsettling whispers were enough to make her heart race. Curiosity got the better of her, and she sought out the source of the conversation. That's when she stumbled upon the video, hidden in plain sight, yet so meticulously concealed. The footage, which no one intended for her to see, featured a man with an enigmatic presence, speaking with someone she quickly recognized as a notorious figure within the world of organized crime. In the video, they discussed a massive investment in Deception, one that was made with funds clearly linked to Sunny's criminal activities. It didn't take long for Maxie to piece it all together. The money wasn't just shady, it was dirty. The revelation hit her hard. She had always prided herself on being part of a company that stood for ethical values, but now, she found herself caught in a web of corruption that threatened to destroy everything Deception had worked for. Sunny's illicit dealings were now directly connected to the brand she had poured so much of her life into. And the worst part? The company had knowingly accepted the money. Maxie's stomach twisted as she realized that this was no longer just about business, it was about survival. If she exposed this, it would ruin Deception, end her career, and destroy her life as she knew it. But the danger didn't stop there. The more Maxie uncovered, the more she realized that the truth wasn't just a threat to Deception, it was a threat to her. The people involved in this scheme weren't just business partners, they were powerful, dangerous individuals who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. As Maxie delved deeper into the situation, her suspicions grew that people within Deception, including Tracy might be directly complicit in hiding the truth. Tracy, ever the calculating strategist, immediately recognized the potential threat Maxie posed. Maxie wasn't just an employee, she was an influential figure within the company and, perhaps more importantly, a close friend of Max Scorpio, the police commissioner. That made her a liability. If anyone could uncover the criminal activities, it was Maxie. Tracy was not one to let such a threat slip through her fingers. With cold precision, she, along with several other key figures from Deception, devised a plan to eliminate Maxie's ability to speak out. They weren't going to allow her to jeopardize everything they had built, especially with her connections to law enforcement. Maxie, whether she realized it or not, had become a pawn in a dangerous game where the stakes were much higher than she had anticipated. Tracy's solution was swift and ruthless. She orchestrated Maxie's removal from Port Charles, not as a punishment for any wrongdoing, but as a preemptive strike. Maxie needed to be silenced, far away from the prying eyes of the authorities. The plan was simple. Take Maxie to Five Poppies, keep her there under the guise of a work trip, and make sure she would never return. The resort, isolated and luxurious, would be the perfect place to keep her under control, far from the reach of Mac or any other potential rescuers. Maxie, initially unaware of the sinister plot unfolding around her, continued her investigation, believing she was merely doing her job. But as she uncovered more, the realization dawned on her. She was being controlled, manipulated, and isolated for reasons far beyond her professional duties. The deeper she went, the more she felt like a pawn in a game she didn't understand. But Maxie wasn't one to back down. She knew that if she didn't act soon, it would be too late, not just for her, but for the truth itself. As she made plans to confront the people involved, she was blindsided by the very people she trusted most. Tracy's betrayal cut deep, but it wasn't just the betrayal that shocked Maxie, it was the lengths to which they were willing to go to keep her quiet. Tracy had made sure Maxie would be rendered powerless in the very place where she thought she would be safe. Maxie's future hung in the balance, and every step she took seemed to push her further into the shadows. Would she find a way out before it was too late? Or would the truth be buried forever under the weight of deception's secrets? The clock was ticking, and the darkness of Five Poppies loomed closer with every passing moment. Maxie's instincts screamed at her to leave, but her feet were glued to the floor. There was no turning back now. The room in front of her seemed to pulsate with an ominous energy, its shadows stretching long into the corners. She couldn't help but feel like she was standing on the precipice of a life-altering decision, one that would either free her or destroy everything she had worked for. The documents scattered across the desk were far more than just business records. They were a roadmap of deception, manipulation, and organized crime, carefully hidden in plain sight. The files were thick, filled with pages upon pages of detailed information, account numbers, names, dates, meetings. It was all there. Maxie's hands trembled as she flipped through them, the magnitude of what she was seeing sinking in with each turn. The money behind deception wasn't just from legitimate investors. It was the product of dirty dealings. The drug money, the illicit arms trade, the underground transactions, all funneled into the company to make it appear legitimate. Maxie's mind raced as she took in the full scope of what was at stake. Deception wasn't just a brand, it was a front. Behind the glossy advertisements and successful product launches was a criminal enterprise, and she had been unwittingly complicit in its success. The betrayal stung her deeply, but it wasn't just the betrayal of the company. Maxie realized that it was a personal betrayal. She had trusted those around her, had placed her faith in people like Tracy and Sunny, never imagining that they were leading her into a deadly web. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on her chest. If she took the documents and exposed everything, she knew the consequences would be dire. Her career would be over. Deception would crumble, and her personal life would be shattered. The connections she had spent years building would disintegrate in a matter of hours. There was no going back once the truth was out. But as she stood there, torn between the darkness of keeping silent and the unbearable burden of revealing the truth, something shifted within her. Maxie wasn't the kind of person who could live with the knowledge of what she had uncovered without doing something about it. She was ready to make her move when a sudden thought paralyzed her. Tracy had to know. The cold, calculating woman had a way of getting what she wanted, and Maxie now realized that Tracy was just as much a part of the corruption as anyone else. Tracy had been running the show from behind the scenes, manipulating Deception's fortunes while covering up the truth. It became clear to Maxie that Tracy's actions weren't just about keeping the company afloat. They were about safeguarding her own position in the underworld of crime. The more Maxie thought about it, the more she understood that Tracy's betrayal was the linchpin in everything. But Tracy wasn't alone. As Maxie's thoughts continued to spiral, she realized that Sonny Corinthos, the man at the heart of Deception's financial success, was no stranger to these kinds of operations. Sonny was notorious for his ruthless dealings in the criminal world, and Maxie couldn't help but wonder how much he knew about the illegal investments funneled into the company. Did he know that Deception was built on money from his criminal empire? Did he approve of it, or was he just a pawn in someone else's game? And then there was Sidwell. Jens Sidwell, the man who had always remained in the background, was just as dangerous. If anyone was truly behind the conspiracy, it was him. Maxie had felt something off about Sidwell from the moment she first met him. His smooth demeanor and charming smile hid a far more sinister nature. Now, as she pieced the puzzle together, she realized that Sidwell had likely known about her investigation all along. He had probably anticipated that she would uncover the truth, and the idea of exposing it would have been enough to make him act quickly, violently, to shut her down. Maxie's pulse quickened as she thought of the consequences. This wasn't just about deception anymore, it was about survival. The people involved were ruthless. They weren't going to let her walk away with these files without consequences. If they knew she was onto them, they wouldn't hesitate to remove her from the equation. Her mind flashed to the possibilities: threats, coercion, even worse. She knew she couldn't go to the authorities. The corruption ran too deep, and anyone she turned to might already be compromised. If she exposed the truth, she could end up a target, not just for Tracy, Sonny, and Sidwell, but for the entire criminal network that deception was now entangled with. Maxie's options were slim. She couldn't stay silent. She couldn't live with the knowledge of what she had uncovered and let these criminals continue to operate in the shadows. But at the same time, the price of exposing them was steep. Her life, her future, everything she had worked for could be destroyed in an instant. The tension in the room became unbearable. Maxie's hand hovered over the documents, and for a split second, she hesitated. Could she really take them? Could she risk everything for the truth? In that moment, she felt a profound shift inside her. She couldn't back down now. She had to act, and she had to act quickly. She stuffed the documents into her bag, determined to get them to the authorities, anyone who could help bring the truth to light. But as she turned to leave, she felt a presence behind her. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She wasn't alone anymore. Someone was watching her. Someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Maxie spun around, her heart pounding. In the dim light of the room, the figure of Tracy emerged from the shadows, her face a mask of cold fury. "Did you really think you could just walk away with this, Maxie?" Tracy's voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. Maxie's breath caught in her throat. She had known this was coming, but now, with Tracy standing in front of her, the reality of the situation hit home. Tracy had been controlling every move, and now, she was here to stop her from exposing the truth. Maxie's body tensed, but her resolve hardened. She couldn't back down now, not when she was so close to ending this. Tracy took a step forward, her eyes narrowing. "You're making a huge mistake, Maxie. Do you think you can destroy everything we've built? Do you think you can expose us without consequences?" Maxie's mind raced. She was caught in a corner, but there was no way she was letting Tracy control the narrative. She couldn't let this be the end of the line. "I'm not going to let you get away with this," Maxie said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. Tracy smiled, a cold, calculated expression. "You have no idea what you're up against." Maxie didn't wait for Tracy to make another move. With one swift motion, she turned and bolted for the door, the documents clenched tightly in her hand. She could hear Tracy's footsteps behind her, but she wasn't about to stop now. Not when the truth was so close. She had to get out of the resort and make sure these files made it to the authorities. The stakes had never been higher. Maxie knew the risks, she was up against powerful people who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. But she wasn't going to let fear control her. She would fight, no matter what it took, because the truth had to come out. The countdown had begun. And this time, there would be no turning back. Maxie's mind raced as the realization of her situation hit her all at once. Her body felt like it was being pulled in every direction, but no matter how hard she struggled, she knew there was no escape. The figures surrounding her moved with chilling precision, their steps echoing in the narrow, dimly lit hallway. Maxie's pulse quickened, her heart hammering in her chest, but she knew there was no time for panic. Not now, not when she was so close to uncovering everything. She had to stay calm, she had to think, if she didn't, it would be the end of everything. She barely had a moment to react before they closed in on her, one figure grabbing her arm while another pinned her against the cold, stone wall. The strength of their grip was overpowering, and Maxie felt a sharp, instinctive panic rise in her throat. But then, amidst the chaos, a clear thought cut through the haze. She knew she had to act fast, or she would be silenced forever, just like the others who had gotten too close to the truth. Maxie twisted in their grasp, her mind sharp and focused. Her hands, though trembling, found the edges of her phone in her pocket. It was the only way she could send the warning to Mac, the only way she could ensure that someone would know what was happening before it was too late. She had to get the message out. She had to warn him. With all her strength, she pulled her phone from her pocket, her fingers working quickly in the darkness. She knew they'd be on her in seconds, but she couldn't stop. She typed the message frantically, her heart pounding as she wrote, "They're after me. They know everything. Deception, Sonny, Sidwell, it's all connected. You have to stop them. They're going to kill me. I'm at Five Poppies. It's a trap." Her breath was shallow as she hit send, her mind racing with the fear of being caught in the act. But then, in a split second, the phone was ripped from her hands, and a powerful force slammed her against the wall, knocking the wind out of her. "Enough." The man snarled, his voice low and filled with malice. His face was shadowed, but she could feel his presence looming over her, the danger in his words clear. She struggled, but her body felt like lead. Another figure, taller, more imposing, stepped into her line of sight, his expression cold and unforgiving. This was no longer just about secrets or a company. This was about survival, and Maxie realized in that instant that she had underestimated the lengths to which these people were willing to go to keep their empire intact. They dragged her down the hall, their grip unrelenting. Maxie could feel the walls closing in on her, both physically and mentally. Her mind flashed through every possibility. How long could she hold on? Could she fight her way out of this? But she knew that the power these men held wasn't just in their physical strength. It was in their connections, their reach, and their ability to erase people who got too close to the truth. She was being taken further into the depths of the resort, the air growing colder with each step. Her mind spun as she realized they were going to silence her permanently. She was no longer just a witness, she had become a target. The documents she had uncovered, the truth about Deception's ties to Sonny's criminal empire, were too dangerous for anyone to see the light of day. Maxie was caught in the middle of a conspiracy so vast, it threatened to engulf everything she knew. In one final, desperate act, as they reached the end of the hall, Maxie broke free for a split second, using the last of her strength to smash her phone on the stone floor. She didn't care about the shattered screen, all that mattered was the message she had sent. Mac would know. Mac would understand. If she didn't make it out alive, at least he would know what had happened. But as quickly as she had acted, they regained control, pushing her into a dark, cold room. The doors slammed shut behind her, the sound reverberating through her skull like a death knell. Maxie was alone, locked away with nothing but her thoughts and the darkness pressing in on her. The last thing she heard before the door closed was the quiet hum of the resort's air conditioning, its soft, mechanical noise a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. Outside, in the silence of the night, Mac received the message. His hands shook as he read the words on the cracked screen. His heart dropped into his stomach. He knew that Maxie had been onto something, he had known she was uncovering something important, but this? This was worse than he had imagined. Maxie had been right all along, and now, he was racing against the clock to find her before it was too late. Mac immediately launched into action, making calls to his contacts, pulling in every favor he had left. He couldn't afford to waste any time. Maxie was in danger, and if he didn't act fast, he might not be able to save her. But the deeper he dug, the more he realized that the conspiracy Maxie had uncovered wasn't just about deception or even Sonny's criminal dealings, it was about a much larger, more dangerous operation. The people behind deception weren't just hiding financial crimes. They were playing a far more deadly game, one that involved far-reaching power and influence. Mac's search became a race against time, and the more he learned, the more he discovered that Maxie's disappearance was no accident. She had been taken, and it was part of a much darker plan. Tracy, who had always been the mastermind behind Deception's rise, had been secretly orchestrating her own escape plan, covering up evidence, and now, with Maxie gone, she had the perfect opportunity to tie up loose ends. But even Tracy couldn't control everything. As Mac followed the trail, he began to realize that there were more players involved than he had anticipated. The web of lies and deceit stretched far beyond Deception's walls, reaching into the highest echelons of power. Sonny, Sidwell, Tracy, they were all part of the same network, a network that had been running the show from the shadows, pulling strings and ensuring that no one would ever uncover the truth. And now Maxie, with her relentless pursuit of justice, had become their biggest threat. As Mac continued his investigation, he uncovered something even more disturbing. Maxie wasn't just missing, she was being held captive. She had been taken to a secluded location, far from the eyes of anyone who could help her.